Hi guys, glory to Jesus Christ. So it's Wednesday night and I recently got back from the men's group at the prison. We had a great group. It was a big group, but they were super attentive. It was remarkable. Sometimes I walk in and it's like, oh, there's a bad energy in the room. Things are going to happen. Maybe there's going to be like somebody has to get thrown out. But tonight was the polar opposite of that. You could have heard a pin drop the entire time, so that was very exciting. So this is just my attempt to share with you kind of what we discussed, because I felt it was very productive and very useful. The gospel reading contains two different accounts of miracles. First was the woman with the issue of blood. This is the woman who had been ritually unclean for many years, and she had spent her fortune on doctors and nobody could stop the bleeding, so she was ritually unclean, but she heard that Jesus was coming through town and she kind of crawled up and touched the hem of his garment and was healed. Then the second portion of the gospel tells the story of Jesus raising Jairus' daughter. Jairus' daughter was home dying, and she actually died before Christ made it to Jairus' house to heal her. And servants came running out and said, you know what, she's dead, don't even worry about trying to get Jesus to come, she's dead, she kicked it, she bought the farm, move on with your life. But of course the Lord said, no, I'm going to go heal her, and of course he did. So how does this apply to the prison ministry? Well, first, the account of the woman with the issue of blood. This is a wonderful example of, so many of these inmates, they really do want to do better. They want to learn how to make better choices, and they want to know that God will forgive them for whatever it is that they've done that has gotten them in trouble. And it's very easy to get caught up in that, and so to not even pray, and to not even read the Bible, and to not even go to church, and to not even try anymore. And that's one of Satan's most effective tactics, right? Is trying to get people to believe that they're so sinful that God can't help them or won't help them, or that somehow the cross does not cover my sins because they're too great. That's a satanic lie. So we talked about how this woman who was under, she was a pariah, she was not ritually clean because she had this constant flow of blood from her body. So for her to be around other Jews who would ritually defile themselves by even coming into physical contact with her, that was a bold and risky maneuver for her. And then for her to reach out and touch Christ's garment took so much courage, and we don't appreciate that today because we don't have such strictures on talking to people and touching people as they did back then. So this applies to each of us, and especially in the prison environment, because unfortunately, there are so many people who, the minute that they hear that somebody has been incarcerated, they write them off completely, and that's a big mistake. It's a serious sin. So we were trying to reassure these inmates that no matter what their situation is at the present time, that if they will take that step, that God will meet them there. We take one step toward God, God takes a million steps towards us. But not only that, but that this woman received the miraculous healing just by touching Christ's clothing, but that in the Eucharist, in the Holy Mysteries, we don't have to settle for that anymore. We can become actual partakers in his body and blood, which is such a greater communion. So that's one aspect of it, right? Is trying to help people have the courage to ask God for healing and to accept the healing. Now, the second part of the gospel reading is about this young girl who dies. She was very ill, and her father and the people who love her are beseeching Christ to come and heal her. But while they're having that conversation, she dies. And so some of the people from the household run out to intercept the first group and say, you know what? Forget it. She's dead. Calling the dogs, we're going home. There's no use, right? She's beyond hope. She's dead. But Christ comes anyway. And he walks into the house and he says, okay, well, show me where she is. Show me where she lies sleeping. And the people who are in the house, they just start laughing at him. They're like, you idiot. She's not asleep. She's dead. She is no more. She's an ex-person. She's dead. But Jesus says, step aside. And of course, he goes in to the inner room with just a few of the disciples. He sends everyone else out. And he says, arise to her. And of course, she is brought back to life, and she rises up and gets out of bed. One of the important applications of this, and I hate to call it a story because it makes it sound like it's not true, but of this part of the gospel for prisoners, is this girl was so sick that she could not beseech Christ herself for help because she was probably comatose and then died. I mean, we know she died, but we don't know precisely what her affliction was. But she was too sick to travel. She was too sick to go into town and find Jesus herself, which is why her family had to do it. So when a person is so mired in sin and death and decay and just all the kinds of spiritual filth that can accumulate in a person and that pervade the secular world, that the prayers of the people around them have great power before God. This is the intercessory power of prayer. And in a prison, I think the guys get this more than maybe somebody who is kind of complacent on the outside might. Because they're in a very dangerous, depressing, upsetting situation 24/7. And so they are well aware, many of them at least, that they need all the prayers they can get. And so we were trying to help them understand that this is one way in which we can actively participate not only in our own salvation, but in the salvation of those around us and the healing of those around us. So, for example, it is absolutely never wrong to pray for somebody with humility, to pray that God's will be done in the life of that person. That's always a good thing to do. So if you're kind of stuck in a situation where you don't know what to do and everyone around you seems to be doing things that aren't so good, you go back to your cell and you pray. and your soul will receive benefit for that. And so will the person you're praying for, by the way, if you're sincere. There's another aspect of this too, though. Not just the intercessory power of prayer, but look, the girl was dead. So obviously she didn't resurrect herself, right? Christ had to do that. Only Christ could resurrect someone. But he said the words, "Little girl, I say to you, arise, come out of your deathbed, come out of your bedroom, arise, you're alive again." But she, for her part, obeyed him. She did what he said. This is critical because it highlights each of our personal responsibilities with regard to our own salvation. We cannot save ourselves, obviously. But salvation is, number one, it is a process. It is not an event. It's a process. It's a lifelong process. And we are called, as St. Paul says, to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. That doesn't mean pulling ourselves up by our own spiritual bootstraps, of course. But what it means is that we need to cooperate with God. And that when we pray to God for something and God opens a door or a window, we have to then go through it. We have to take that opportunity that he has given us. No matter how weird it may seem to those around us. Because ultimately, the only standard that matters is God's standard, right? Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. So, that in itself takes courage. You know, to kind of step out of the boat and into the water. That takes a lot of courage. And You know, in the prison system, we're dealing with people, most of them have severe substance abuse problems. Some of them are looking at spending the rest of their lives in prison. Some of them have already, I mean, they're in a county jail, but they've already been raped in prison. Some of them, actually, I would say most of them, have come from tremendously unstable outside lives. You know, their family, their current relationship, maybe their marriage, it's always a disaster. And so, for them to realize that even when God answers your prayer in the affirmative and He gives you what you want, you might have to play a part in that. But that should give you a measure of, that should be kind of a shot in the arm, because what that says is that you're not helpless, right? You can't just sit there like a lump, right? That God has a use for you, and that things that you do can positively impact not only your own salvation, but the salvation of those around you. So we were trying to just encourage these guys that no matter what their story is, that they're not alone, that God will heal them and bring them peace and spiritual health if they will humbly and persistently pray and support that with sacramental participation in the life of the church, and in trying to live a life that is consistent with their professed Christian beliefs, which is something, of course, we all struggle with. This isn't a problem unique to prisons or unique to prison ministry, but it kind of is concentrated on the inside, because there's so much pain and so much turmoil that people just bring in with them, and you can see it on their faces. You can see that burden. So it really all comes down, in my opinion, to trying to help people trust God, while understanding that God knows what is best for each of us. We do not. And so sometimes God does not answer our prayers on our timeline. And sometimes He doesn't answer our prayers in the way that we might like with the information that we have right now. But that if we will trust that ultimately it will work out for our soul's benefit, and we go along with it and we trust God, beautiful things will happen. Romans 8:28, right? All things ultimately work together for good for those who love the Lord. God's word is true. We have to trust it. And when we really abandon ourselves to that, when we really make the choice to trust God, worry flies out the window. It doesn't matter if you have, your trial is going on. It doesn't matter if you're facing the death penalty. And I've met people who are facing the death penalty. I know plenty of people on death row too. But I almost think it's worse to be in the middle of your trial. Anyway, worry will go out the window. My priest said this to me the other day. He's brilliant. I love this guy. He said, talking about a situation with a mutual acquaintance, and he said, worrying is a sin, because really what it means is you don't trust God as much as you should. So if we really trust God, if we're calling ourselves Christians, we should believe the gospel that we profess to believe, which means we should trust God. If we trust God, why worry? If we don't trust God, why are we even here? Why are we having this conversation? You can't be a Christian if you don't trust God. And that can be scary in the beginning. I mean, St. Peter got scared walking out on the water, and Christ was right ahead of him standing on the water. But St. Peter still got scared. So, of course, you and I and these inmates, we're all going to get scared. We're all going to have our failings. We're going to have our doubts. And that's why, glory to God, He will pick us up and dust us off and set us back on the right path again. Anyway, I just wanted to get some of this out there on internet land. So thank you for watching. I'm up against my time limit. I gotta run. God bless you all. I will see you guys in the next clip. Bye.